My name is Lisa, and I want to share a story about something that happened to me on a Saturday morning, a day I will never forget. It started like one of those perfect mornings that make you feel happy for no reason at all. The sun was shining brightly, casting warm golden rays through my window. The birds outside were chirping a cheerful melody, and the breeze carried the sweet scent of flowers blooming in the garden below. The air felt fresh and full of possibilities, and I was in a great mood. I had been waiting for this day because I had ordered a box of items online, a little treat for myself after a busy week. The thought of unboxing my goodies filled me with excitement. I had carefully picked out the items, a few books to add to my growing collection, some skincare products that promised to make my skin glow, and a cute little lamp I'd had my eye on for months. I couldn't wait to see them all in person. As I went about my morning routine, the anticipation grew. I cleaned my apartment, arranged the pillows on my couch just so, and even baked a fresh batch of cookies to keep myself busy while I waited. The smell of chocolate chip cookies wafted through my cozy third-floor apartment, making the atmosphere feel even more special. That morning felt like everything was in harmony, and I was certain nothing could go wrong. Little did I know, the day would take a turn I never saw coming, leaving me with an experience I would carry with me forever. I live alone in a small apartment on the third floor of a building. It's not a mansion or anything fancy, but it's mine, and I love it. At 22 years old, I work as a security engineer. Even though my job keeps me busy, it pays well enough for me to live comfortably. My apartment has this warm, welcoming vibe with soft beige walls, colorful throw pillows, and little plants I've managed not to kill yet. Living alone has its perks. I can wake up whenever I want, blast my favorite music, or dance around in my pajamas without worrying about anyone watching. But it can get a little too quiet sometimes. On most days, I enjoy my space, though it feels peaceful. That Saturday morning, I was in a great mood. The sun was shining through my living room window, casting beautiful golden streaks on my wooden floors. I decided to clean up my apartment, not because it was messy, but because tidying up always made me feel productive. I dusted the shelves, vacuumed the carpet, and rearranged the books on my little bookshelf, putting my favorites in the front row. After cleaning, I thought about what to do next while waiting for my delivery. I remembered I had a halved bag of chocolate chips in the cupboard and decided to bake cookies. The idea made me smile. There's something magical about the smell of fresh cookies filling up your home. Around 11 a.m., as I was finishing the last cookie from my plate, my phone buzzed loudly on the coffee table. Startled for a moment, I picked it up and saw a notification from the delivery company. My heart skipped a beat when I read the text, "Your package will arrive in 10 minutes." A wave of excitement rushed through me. Finally, it's here. I said out loud to no one in particular, a big smile spreading across my face. This was the moment I had been waiting for all week. I quickly got up, wiping imaginary crumbs off my hands, and double-checked that the doorbell was working. I pressed it once, and the sharp ding-dong echoed through my small apartment. Perfect, I murmured. I didn't want to miss the delivery guy. What if he came and left before I could answer? I glanced at the mirror in the hallway as I passed by, fixing my hair a little and straightening my comfy sweater. It wasn't like I needed to impress anyone, but I wanted to look decent. Next, I walked over to the couch near the door and plopped down, keeping my phone in hand just in case I needed to answer another call or text. From my spot on the couch, I had a clear view of the front door, and I could hear every little sound in the hallway outside. To pass the time, I started scrolling through my phone, but quickly put it down. I didn't want to be so distracted that I missed the knock on the door. Instead, I tapped my fingers on the armrest, staring at the door as if that would make the delivery guy arrive faster. 10 minutes later, just as I was beginning to wonder if the delivery guy had gotten lost, there was a loud, sharp knock on the door. The sound startled me, and I jumped up from the couch, my heart racing not from fear, but from excitement. Finally, I said to myself, brushing invisible crumbs off my hands as I hurried to the door. When I opened it, there he was, a man in a delivery uniform, standing tall and holding a big brown box with both hands. The box looked heavier than I expected, and I wondered if all my items were packed together. His uniform was slightly wrinkled, and he had a cap pulled low over his forehead, but I could still see his face clearly. "Good morning," he said, his voice deep but polite. His lips curled into a friendly smile, but his eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than they should have. It wasn't outright rude, but there was something about the way he looked at me that made me feel a little off. I tried to ignore the feeling and smiled back politely. "Good morning," I replied, my tone cheerful. "Thank you so much for bringing my package." He nodded, but instead of handing the box to me right away, he shifted it slightly, his hands like he was stalling. "This is a big one," he said, his smile widening. "Are you sure you don't need help carrying it inside?" I glanced at the box. It wasn't that big, and while it looked a bit heavy, I was confident I could manage it on my own. "Oh no, it's fine," I said quickly, holding out my hands. "I've got it." But he didn't hand it over immediately. Instead, he leaned slightly closer and asked, "You live here alone?" The question caught me off guard. I blinked, unsure how to answer. Why would he need to know that? My first instinct was to be honest, but something about the way he asked made me hesitate. "Yes," I said after a short pause, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Must be nice," he said, still smiling, but his eyes now seemed to study me. "Quiet, peaceful." "It is," I replied quickly, trying to steer the conversation back to the package. "Anyway, thank you for bringing this. I've been waiting all morning." Finally, he handed the box to me. I reached out, gripping the edges tightly, and immediately noticed how warm the box felt from his hands. I wanted to close the door quickly and end the conversation, but he didn't step back. Instead, he kept standing there, looking at me with that same strange smile. "Is there anything else you need?" I asked, forcing a polite smile while trying to keep my voice calm but firm. My hand gripped the edge of the door tightly, ready to close it as soon as possible. Instead of answering right away, he stepped closer, and I instinctively stepped back. My heart started beating faster, a nervous flutter building in my chest. Something about his sudden movement made me uneasy. "You're really pretty," he said, his voice softer now, almost as if he were trying to sound charming. His eyes lingered on me in a way that made my skin crawl. "Thank you," I replied nervously, my voice barely above a whisper. I took another step back, putting more distance between us. I have to go now. Have a nice day." I moved to close the door, eager to end this interaction and shake off the uncomfortable feeling that had settled over me. But before I could shut it, he placed his foot in the doorway, stopping me. "Wait," he said, his tone changing slightly. It wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't entirely friendly anymore either. "I just want to talk to you for a moment." My mind raced as I tried to figure out what to do. My palms felt clammy, and I could hear my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I looked down at his foot wedged in the door and back up at his face. He still had that strange smile, but now it felt less like a smile and more like something else, something that made me feel trapped. "I'm really busy," I said quickly, my voice shaking slightly but still trying to sound firm. "I appreciate your compliment, but I don't have time to chat." I pulled at the door again, hoping he'd get the hint and leave. But he didn't move. "Just 1 minute," he insisted, leaning a little closer. "You seem nice. I'd like to get to know you." The unease inside me grew stronger. This wasn't just a simple delivery anymore. I needed to end this now. My fingers tightened around the edge of the door, and I started thinking about how to handle the situation if he refused to leave. He smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that made you feel safe or at ease. It was warm and friendly. My stomach tightened as I watched him, trying to figure out what to do next. "Don't be scared," he said, his voice low and smooth, almost as if he were trying to calm me. But instead of feeling reassured, his words only made me more nervous. The way he said it, like he knew I was afraid, sent a chill down my spine. "I just want to be friends," he added, tilting his head slightly, his eyes fixed on mine. The intensity in his gaze was unsettling, and I felt like I couldn't look away, even though I desperately wanted to. I forced a weak smile, hoping it would make him think I wasn't as scared as I felt. I don't think this is a good time," I stammered, my voice shaky but polite. "I have a lot to do today, and I really need to get back to it." Then his words shifted, and they caught me completely off guard. "You are my perfect lady," he said, his voice soft but filled with an unsettling intensity. "I've been looking for someone like you for 10 years of my life." I froze, my thoughts spinning like a whirlwind. His words were strange and far too personal for someone I had just met at my doorstep. I couldn't understand why he was saying this or why he seemed so determined to stay. But then I did something I couldn't fully explain. Maybe it was out of shock, or maybe it was the way he said those words with so much emotion that made me hesitate. My heart was racing, but I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I told myself that he couldn't really mean harm. Maybe he was just awkward or lonely. I slowly stepped back, my hands still resting on the edge of the door. "Okay," I said quietly, my voice trembling but controlled. "You can come in for a minute." As I opened the door wider, he stepped inside, carrying the box with him. The room felt smaller almost immediately, his presence filling the space. I gestured towards the small dining table in the corner of my apartment. "You can set the box there," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He placed the box down but didn't immediately leave. Instead, he turned to look at me, his eyes scanning the room briefly before settling back on me. "Thank you," he said, his smile returning. "You have a beautiful home." I nodded, unsure of how to respond. "Thanks," I muttered, my mind racing. I was trying to figure out what to do next, how to steer this encounter back to normal, and how to get him to leave. The strange feeling in the pit of my stomach hadn't gone away, and I knew I needed to be careful. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card, handing it to me with a confident smile. I glanced down at it, noticing his name and number printed neatly along with the logo of the delivery company. "You can call me anytime you need anything," he said smoothly, his tone dripping with familiarity. "Since you're a single lady, I'd be happy to help you out." His words caught me off guard, and I looked up at him, confused. "Help me with what?" I asked cautiously, my fingers nervously fidgeting with the card. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice as if sharing some kind of secret. "Well," he said, his smile growing wider, "aside from deliveries, I also assist single ladies who need company or help in other ways." My eyebrows shot up as his meaning became clear. "What?" I said, my voice shaky, unsure if I had heard him correctly. "You know," he continued, as if this was the most normal thing in the world, "I help ladies who are single and need someone in bed. But don't worry," he added quickly, holding up a hand as though to reassure me. I'll do it for free the first 3 times. Just for you. I felt my face heat up, a mix of embarrassment, anger, and disbelief washing over me. My mind raced as I tried to process what he had just said. Was this some kind of joke? Did he think this was appropriate to say to someone he had just met? No, thank you, I said firmly, my voice stronger now as I straightened up. I don't need that kind of help. But he didn't seem fazed. Instead, he chuckled lightly, like he thought I was just playing hard to get. Well, if you change your mind, he said, pointing to the card in my hand. You know how to reach me. I took a step back, putting more distance between us. I think it's time for you to leave, I said firmly, my heart still racing but my voice steady. He shrugged, his smile still plastered on his face. All right, he said, turning toward the door. But remember, the offer stands. Don't be shy to call me. As he walked out, I closed the door behind him quickly and locked it, my hands trembling slightly. I stared at the card in my hand for a moment before tossing it onto the table, feeling a strange mix of relief and unease. What had just happened? And why had he thought it was okay to say something like that? This guy was persistent, too persistent. Even though I had asked him to stop multiple times, he didn't listen. It was as if my words didn't matter to him. Somehow, he managed to find his way into my house, his confidence growing with every moment that passed. He seemed determined to get what he wanted, despite my initial resistance. I found myself caught off guard by his persistence. There was a strange mix of unease and confusion stirring in my mind. How had things escalated to this point so quickly? He sat down casually, as though he belonged there, and started talking as if we were old friends. I kept my distance, watching him carefully, unsure of what his next move would be. Part of me wanted to kick him out immediately, but another part, the part that didn't want to cause a scene, hesitated. As the minutes ticked by, I realized I needed to regain control of the situation. Listen, I said, my voice firm but calm. I'm really busy, and I didn't expect company. I think it's time for you to leave now. He stood up slowly, that same unsettling smile on his face. I understand, he said, but his tone suggested otherwise. I just wanted to make sure you knew you could count on me. If you ever needed anything, don't hesitate to call. He gestured toward the card he had given me earlier, his eyes locking on mine as if to emphasize his words. Then, without another word, he walked to the door and let himself out, leaving behind a heavy tension in the air. I locked the door behind him, my hands shaking slightly. My home no longer felt like the safe, cozy space it had been just hours ago. I stared at the card he had given me, torn between throwing it away and keeping it just in case. In the end, I decided to keep it hidden, far out of sight, not because I wanted to reach out to him, but because I thought it might be useful someday, only if absolutely necessary. I told myself it was better to be prepared for anything. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time I would hear from him.